those who were involved in making it come to life. Join us as we go behind the door.
Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Doors with the Grey Rooms podcast. This is for a bonus episode called The Rivers, written by Jason Pouris. Tonight we have with us the author, Jason Pouris.
Hi there.
We have one of the actors of this story, Graham Rowat.
Don't pay the ferryman!
You were the ferryman, actually.
Don't pay me because I don't have any pain.
The man that puts it all together for our ears to hear, Jason Wilson.
That was Graham. You're the best.
We have fun here.
And I'm Brooks Bigley. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Jason Pouris. Thank you for writing this story, man. This was a very interesting and fun story to listen to.
It was an interesting story to
different.
write, I can tell you that.
Oh, I'm sure you had a blast writing it. It's a lot different too than what we're kind of used to having on the show. So it was really fun to. I'm really excited that we're going to be releasing this to the public. Can you kind of share like what inspired you initially before you wrote anything to come up with the plot for the story?
So my initial thought was I wanted to write a story based on ancient Greek something because I'm Greek, born and raised. So I felt like I wanted to write a story about something there, and my mind went to the rivers of Hades. So that was the initial, that was the initial inspiration. And throughout the story, the main character kind of goes through all of them in both physically and metaphorically, so to speak.
Interesting. So did you research anything? Did you pull from personal knowledge? What did you start to use to start putting this together?
So I did the traditional Google search because I wanted to remind myself. Obviously, I've heard of all this in the past. I've read it before in classes and all that. But, we need a refresher. So I refreshed my memory for each of the rivers, tried to think of how to connect them, and then I tried to just create one of those myths you hear once in a while. And more specifically, I kind of stuck to the myth of Sisyphus, which was a mortal punished by the gods to forever roll a boulder up a hill only for it to fall down before he manages to get it back, to get it to the top. So that kind of futility and never-ending effort kind of guided my my thought process through making the story.
Right, because the narrator, you find out kind of in a sly way that he's just going to repeat the whole entire thing all over again. And it's interesting, he doesn't quite... Like, I had to listen twice when I finally realized of how the coin appeared, because in the beginning he doesn't understand why he has was it a bronze coin?
Yes.
To pay the fare.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the end, it just matter of fact, just appeared. It kind of floated down. It just appeared for him, right, in the water.
Yeah.
So I heard it second time. I was like, oh, okay, I got it. That connects that part to me and completes that loop. And he just wakes up again and just goes through it again. It was very...
Yeah. And actually, I felt like making it loop the way it did makes it also feel like this doesn't necessarily mean this was the first time.
Right.
We could have just been watching one of the snaps of however many times he's been going through this.
Yeah. Yeah, his left arm hurt the first time you hear it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Graham, what do you think about the story, man? You did a good ferryman.
I love finding yourself, I love when you don't know where the person is. You're sort of discovering everything at the same time as the character is discovering it. Mm-hmm. And you're being fed little bits of narrative, little nuggets, like when we first get to the ferryman and you're like, it's a boat, and you start to wonder whether are we crossing the river Styx? Is this You know, are we in ancient times? It's just great. It's just great to feel like you're. It's a strange thing, but it also starts to become familiar, and the combination that's kind of satisfying because you're like, oh, I know this. Oh, I wonder if this is going to happen now, and you're like, oh, it did. So it's really cool. It's a really great take on a fresh way to take you back to sort of an old concept, but to bring it to life again in a really cool way.
Yeah, I had Indiana Jones
that's a nice
vibes.
way to put that.
Like at the very beginning, nice. I had Indiana Jones vibes of like, oh, hey, this is another adventure, and yeah. But then the boat comes out of the water.
In a way, he attempted to do a journey usually meant for heroes, and failed at it. Right.
We just watched. Actually, I had to duck away to do some recording, but my son is 8 and he is getting into. He's just. I hope he gets into the Greek mythology the way I did, but he had read the first Percy Jackson book, which is
yes,
sort of revisits stuff. A lot of those Greek myths. And yesterday, we try to save watching the movie until they finish the book. And so yesterday we watched some of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and then I had to go record. But I believe they have a similar. The end of the story, they go to Hades, or to the underworld. It's fascinating. I didn't realize that Hades was later. Wait, Pluto, was he called Pluto first or then Hades? But Hades then became known as the place versus the god.
Yeah, it's a little because mythology has been deciphered through multiple different pieces in multiple different regions across time. Sometimes certain things are mentioned, and it's a little unclear whether it's a location, a person, both. And so through multiple translations and copies, it's kind of become it's kind of both, because gods are gods, so they can be both a personified human shape over here, but also be the world they live in as well. Right.
Interesting.
Fascinating. Well, I ducked away, but I believe they also go to the underworld, and so I love Greek mythology, and I'm hoping my son will get attracted to it as well.
I feel like with most myth, and you can find a piece that connects to something you're familiar with. So just the easiest way would be find something he already likes and connect it to a story that can hook him through that.
Right, and it's all. And I'm also grateful for new authors, not unlike yourself, who take these myths and make them fresh and new again for a younger audience.
Yeah, definitely.
I was always big into the Roman Empire and Greek mythology. I was always fascinated by it. That's actually what drew me to this story when I was reading it, because I caught myself when I was reading, and the boat came up, and the only thing that was said was, pay the toll, or something along those lines. I can't remember. Pay the toll.
The fare.
The fare. Thank you. And what popped into my head was, when I was a kid, being in a Greek mythology that as big as I was, I used to watch the old Clash of the Titans. Like, I watched that so many times. Yes. And some of my favorite parts of that, were like when they stabbed the bag and the blood came out, and then it turned into the scorpions, and then when they were fighting the Medusa, and she was turning people, and he beat her with the reflection of shield. But when I read that particular part in that story, I remember the boatman, Charon, I believe his name is, would put his hand out, his bony skeleton hand, and he put that big gold coin in the middle, and his hand just closed around it. And then he got on to go, him and his friends got on to go across the water to fight, I believe it was Medusa. And I just instantly fell in love with the story at that point in time. So, and I loved it. It was great. It was dark, and he put his hand in the water, and he was trying to pull him in there, and it was just such a great story.
Now, Jason,
Yes.
author Jason, do you have a good relationship with your brother?
Yes,
I
he's gonna
do.
go into that.
This was not an indirect jab to my brother. No. In fact,
Good
if
question,
I did,
Graham. Good question.
I know
In fact,
Brooks
if I
probably already had it
didn't-
on his list.
Yeah, no, that was my.
In fact,
this
if
is
I
where I was
didn't
going,
have
yes.
as good a relationship as I do with my brother, I don't think I'd feel comfortable writing a story like this.
Well, how did you work that in then? So was that part of the inspiration for the character himself? Because you rooted it very well in that relationship. It gave him a good purpose
Yes,
to do what he was
I did
doing.
because we used to fight as children a lot. He's 4 years
yeah,
older than
come
me.
on.
Yeah, of course. 4 years older than me, 5 years ahead in school because he was the youngest in his grade. And so it ended up being a lot of infighting. And using that memory, and because, growing up in Greece, learning about ancient mythology was kind of around the same time, I kind of connected the two into the nostalgia for the myths and the nostalgia for a time where we didn't have as good a relationship as we have now, but we were more naive and wild, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
So narrator did it by accident, right? He pushed Theo on accident, right? There was no malicious intent there.
It was more of a in the moment everything goes red kind of situation.
Just like,
it wasn't
like a brother
intentional.
thing. Yeah, just like
Nice.
pushing back, like, no, that's my toy, and then kind of pushing the hand away or something.
Yeah, it was like reaching an edge and falling off metaphorically and physically.
Okay.
I was going to say, spoiler alert.
Hey, if you're listening to this, you've heard the story. It's your fault.
Theoretically.
No spoilers.
Theoretically. But then again, even if they missed it, it will repeat. So they'll see the next one.
Right. On the next revolution. Yes.
Good point. Good
Yeah.
point.
I always like listening to a story and hearing the extra Foley stuff that Jason ends up having to record. I believe, was it your death scream, Jason?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, falling off the cliff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all I recorded was whoa or something, and I hear it go whoa. Oh! And I'm pretty sure I didn't do that part.
Guilty as charged, brother.
Yeah.
Guilty as charged.
I respect your listening to your muse, and
That's the power of the envelope, man. You just make it, fade out. You just go, oh, and then you just put a little ramp on it, and it just gets. That's it. It wasn't that hard. It's no big deal. I had a couple of drinks afterwards.
well, yeah, no, I'm grateful that you didn't go. Oh, why did you?
No.
Didn't take any artistic license there. I appreciate that. I thought you loved me.
What a world.
Speaking of special effects, how did you do like the sound of the water as like the boat came up out? Like, what sound effects did you use for that? How did you put that scene together?
Well, honestly, that was a series of a bunch of boats getting beached sound effects. That's really all it was. It was just taking waves and finding when to cut them. Like you take the wave and you hit it at its crest and you cut it off because just kind of add to build a bigger sound. But I had 3 sounds of 3 different boats getting beached, and I just kind of panned them out and adjusted the pitch to them, and just kind of put everything together there. And actually, it was kind of the same with when they were going over the water. When the boat was sailing and he's sitting there talking about looking down and seeing the souls or the people swimming below him and everything. It's all that was literally a piece of driftwood floating. There was a sound effect of a piece of driftwood in water. And then the other one was somebody literally taking their hand and splashing it in the water. That was the sound of the oars. And then you just find some creaking wood and throw it all together.
It's so amazing how it comes together, and you take those sounds individually and it's just whatever it is. Like I would have never thought it was I thought maybe you used like some kind of boiling sound. But to find out what you're using and putting together, it tricks our ears so well. Good job.
I did hear the when at the very end he's looking out over, he realizes where he is and he's hearing the distant screams of the pits, the fiery pits below, and I'm listening to those distant screams, and I'm like, oh, Jason's going to get some more use out of these sounds later on.
No, I didn't.
Now,
I know what you're talking about.
That's a
It's
spoiler
funny.
right there.
You hear sound effects and you're like, oh, I'm going to hear that one again.
Yeah.
Because we're in the gray rooms.
Yes.
Yep.
But you heard it at first in the rivers.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Only our sad
You heard it
fans are
first
connected.
here.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad that you picked that up, Graham. I have to give you some kudos for that one. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I definitely reuse this later for sure. Because I remember when I was sitting there and he's doing the pit, basically he's staring out over the pit of hell essentially, and I was like, okay. And then later on in another story, it clicked in my head. That was really cool then. It's going to be cool now. So I made a couple of changes, but yeah, use the same thing. Got it. Damn it.
That's all right. Just keep your ears tuned, fans and friends, for later on. More hellfire pits of death.
And the screams. Let's not forget the screams.
If you're listening to this, and you can DM me on social media what that is, I'll give you a free sticker. This offer expires 1 month from today.
We are skirting so close to giving away spoilers here.
Yeah, I know. It's just we're living in dangerous times. So
Yeah.
Right.
So
let's
So author Jason,
yes,
you're I'm gonna call you that, author Jason and producer Jason.
Okay, cool.
Your character was very what's the word? Very kind of calm. Like I want to return back to how this idea of him going through this over and over again. It was almost like he was accepting as he went through each part. He woke up on the river again, started walking, going through the field, ends up basically in Hades, walking just through. What did you say? Something about like boiling blood, leaving a trail of boiling blood behind. He just seems so
that was
resolute.
after the River of Fire.
Okay, the River of Fire.
Yeah,
it just was like it was like, this is what I need to do now. It was almost like not he was brainwashed, but he was just in that mode of just going through it. Was that intentional, or was that a clue to anything?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Because yes, in the sense that even though his memory was being wiped, because each river has kind of an attribute to it.
Yeah.
So I took those attributes from mythology and kind of loosely applied them to the rivers in the story as well. So every time he forgets, however, even though he forgets, in the sense that he's stuck there body and soul,
right?
While normally when people die, only their souls go to the. So essentially, his body forgets, but his soul remembers. So he can't fight it. He can only just repeat and just be hit with the realization every single time, even though his soul remembers and it has quote unquote accepted it. But the shock is real and new every time. And he never actually
such as the gray rooms, baby.
Yes.
Such as the gray rooms.
He never actually meets Theo though, right? Because that I don't want to say entity, demon, the spirit that says "Who are you?" was not Theo.
Yeah, no, that's not Theo. No.
Yeah, so he never.
It was
ends
just an
up
effigy to be.
Kind of to bring him along.
No, Theo, I don't see Theo as being in Hades.
Right. That was going to be my next question. Why would he be there?
Yeah. I mean, Theo was kind of annoying. That's how I wanted to portray
Come on, little
him
brother.
in the... Yeah, like I wanted to... Like I didn't want to dismiss the fact that he felt like an annoying older brother. But at the end of the day, that was the extent of what Theo had done. He hadn't really done anything. So in my mind, he's not in Hades.
So for full disclosure, before we started talking, he talked about how great his brother was, and he loved him so much, and that absolutely nothing he would say about this story meant anything towards his brother. So Jason, I appreciate you telling us how much wonderful your brother was.
Yes, he is.
He loves you very much, and this is not you. So okay, let's continue.
It's not about you.
I appreciate that.
Got your back, bud. You got a great name, so I got your back.
There you go.
Thank you. You too.
So what kind of horror are you into, author Jason? Like what other kind of things could we expect from you if you were to write, more?
I am very much into cosmic horror.
Okay.
I've read the entire bibliography of Lovecraft and some of his peers because I just love that kind of mind-bendy horror.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with
Yes.
slashers or anything like that, but like for every Friday the 13th, which was a few days ago, which I call Jason Day, and I celebrated just for fun.
There
You know what?
You're
That is
allowed
now
to do
that's a holiday. You have to hold on. It's like Chrissy. Friday the 13th is Jason Day. Okay, we're putting that on
You're
our
welcome.
calendar
You're
now.
welcome.
So, you're the man.
There you go. I love it. And it happens more than once a year, right?
Yeah, there's also the thing where you kind of, where did this come from? What is happening? I don't know who to trust.
Yes.
And at the end, you're kind of left kind of still questioning, am I crazy? Did this just happen? Kind of situation.
Horror,
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I want to just chime in that I also love the cosmic horror and the idea that we encounter creatures whose scope and of existence is so giant and so foreign that we are insignificant to them, and we crossing paths with them so ruins our idea of reality. That it breaks our minds.
Yeah. We are a blip to them, and they destroy our psyche just by being seen.
and we're not the center of the universe.
No, that's the scariest part for human.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Pouris, if I may, real quick here, I was just getting accosted by my family members because I mentioned that Jason is the Friday the 13th day. And my son was like, my birthday is August 13th. So 13 is the number for another Jason. So 13 and then Friday the 13th is Jason Day from this day on forward. And yeah.
And there it was. There you go.
And so it is.
And so it is, and so it shall be.
And so it is.
It was Jason Day. Amazing. Definitely.
And I swear I will stop coming back to this, I promise.
It's okay. You're named Jason. You're allowed to.
Yeah, listen, I'm not complaining.
Yeah, there you go. So tell me a little bit, author Jason, about your authorship. Have you written for any other podcasts? Have you written horror stories in the past? Have you been a part of any book anthologies, anything like that?
No. I
Toilet
tried.
graffiti. Have you written toilet graffiti?
I was never one of those rebels. No, I always
Guilty as charged.
I always was the friend of the rebels. I knew when I was growing up, I knew people that tagged walls and did graffiti, never joined them. I knew people that were in way different scenes than me, but I never partook in any of that. But speaking of writing, I tried both late in high school and in college to write, and it always kind of hit a brick wall for me.
Yeah.
And then I started dealing with my mental health and started fixing that. And so about a couple of years ago, I decided to finally start like in earnest.
Good man.
And I discovered you guys. I'm not even sure from where. I remember like very early in season 1. I started listening to you guys, and then eventually one of the episodes you mentioned submissions, and I'm like, well, I've been thinking about writing, I've been trying this was an opportunity that appeared, and I'm like, you know what, let me write 1-2 stories. Let's see what happens. And that's where it went from there. And from then, I've written several more stories. I'm working on a website. I've been exercising on my writing using my good friend and roommate, who's been giving me little prompts for like little writing prompts, and I've been writing little tiny short stories for each one.
That's right.
And he's been like trying to. Yeah.
You were discussing
Do you
that.
guys know
what is? Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What is it called? When they'll take
Yeah, the
100 words.
drabble.
Yeah, drabble stuff. Drabble something. No, is it just drabble? Is that it?
Yeah. So apparently, I found that out like by accident, like as I was googling around. And a drabble is a 100-word short story. It has to be exactly 100 words, and it has to just that's the story. Oof. And so I wrote 50 of them based on random prompts from my roommate and friend. And I'm just gonna, when the website is ready, I'm just gonna plaster them across my website for free.
You have 50 stories,
cool. Writing samples,
actual 50 different plots and everything.
Yes.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah, they're only 100 words, but like several
that makes it harder.
Ended up. Yeah, maybe, but what I did notice is that when you write so many stories, a few of them end up being good enough that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write a longer version of that now.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Interesting.
So that's, and there's more. I'm trying to dive head in. That's what I'm doing with this stuff now.
Awesome.
Trying to write as much as possible. I'm almost done with my 3rd short story out of 10 that I'm working on.
Good job, man. That's awesome.
Ass, dude.
Yeah.
Way to go.
What's the biggest challenge for you now? My challenge is always just setting aside the time for any sort of creative
Exactly.
endeavor. How do you manage to do that?
It's tough but I think just because of how I've lived my life so far, it's kind of proven convenient for me in the sense that I'm not a big outgoing person. I stay inside a lot, and I've found ways to entertain myself through reading, writing, guitar, anything for a long time now. So switching what I do when I'm inside from something random or like random entertainment to writing hasn't been too difficult. It's still after an 8 to 5 job, your mental capacity is only so much before you're like, okay, I can't.
Yep.
Here. I feel you. Here. I'm going to give that one a 10-5. 10-5, 10-4.
10-4. 10-9.
10-4 plus 1 for good men.
There you go.
You got that right. See, we Jason's got each other's backs.
Must be Jason Day. Jeez.
Oh, Jason.
So yeah, I'm just trying. I'm trying the shotgun approach. I'm writing about literally in every single genre I can think of. Like right now, I'm just finishing a family drama. Next is a romance, a post-apocalyptic romance. Then I have an action adventure and another horror story. Yeah, I'm just doing a lot because I want to force myself to be on a path where like, you can't stop now. You just got to keep going.
So how could you inspirationally say that to someone? Because I know some people who are excellent writers, but they get stuck wondering whether their writing is good enough, whether they should continue something. That whole thing about being your own critic. You are your own worst critic. Do you have any kind of suggestions to someone like that could be struggling, that could just kind of change their mindset, about that?
I'd say that for me, I always know that I'm never going to be 100% with anything. Because I know myself, and I'm sure there's a lot of creatives out there that can relate to that as much work as you put on something, you could be happy with the result, but it doesn't mean that in the back of your mind, you can still have that, I could just a little more, just a little, maybe if that word isn't there, or if I change this little thing. But at the end of the day, what I found helped me is showing one finished product, even if you don't like it, to someone and be like, what do you think? And you, as long as you trust that person, even if they're not good, quote unquote, with writing or what's popular, they'll tell you an honest opinion, and you can, and then take it as, instead of taking it as criticism, I take it as, how do I explain this? Do any of you ever get that thing where you get a word in a different language or in a different way, and then you can't translate it?
No,
I would think that you're talking about peer research. You're getting the you're getting the feedback from somebody else so that you can kind of expand on it. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I do the same thing with my audio at times. I get you.
Because I would never have finished that first story if I've relied a lot on my good friend for reading my story.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest. The most valuable thing is to find a friend like that whose opinion you trust and who is also sensitive to your creative process and is going to give you helpful suggestions and also sort of compliment you on what they, affirm what they like. Every now and then you'll encounter someone who's just going to tell you what you did wrong, and that's usually when I'm telling Jason, about his audio edits and stuff like that. But
postal management, that's all I gotta say.
No, it's always good to find somebody who will reaffirm what you did right and then give you suggestions. And when you find that person, that's so valuable.
Yeah, constructive.
If nothing
criticism.
else, all my friends have no qualms criticizing me bluntly, and I think I've made that a point that it's okay for them to do it, but I think they'll do it. They do it anyway because that's the kind of friend, and I appreciate them for it.
Well, you gotta appreciate that honesty, man, and that's just gonna make you better at the craft. And we are very grateful to have been able to take such a wonderful story. Like I said, when that coin hit the hand, the first thing I saw was those fingers closing over that big coin in Clash of the Titans, and that was it. That was the hook moment for me, man. I bit. It was a well done story, and obviously Graham does such a wonderful job. So can never tell.
Well, thank you very much.
Always.
Absolutely.
Glasses are still on.
I loved how you guys handled the story, by the way, and the way it reaches that climax near the end, where he gets the flashback and then realizes, and then he's transported and he sees the pit to Tartarus, which is what that giant pit that's supposed to signify Tartarus.
Right.
And I loved how the sound kind of crescendoed there, and it was just great. I just loved it.
One unspoken hero in the production process of this, and I don't always talk about him because, well, I can't help it, but J.M. Scherf, the music that he always puts to these episodes just really, I can only do so much. Obviously, the speaking, the spoken word, and some of the sound effects that throw everything together, but that's great. But I truly think that the soul of a story comes out when JM really paints it with his brush. And so I'm glad that you enjoyed it, because I know JM really enjoyed creating music for this episode. So
yeah, it was great. It really made me feel the story. The music did. So I'm very grateful for JM for doing it.
Yeah, those drums really
and also,
it was great.
He's marvelous, and I'm afraid we've gone a while. We're probably overdue to thank the lovely Ellie Hirschman for his work narrating the story.
Of course.
Thank you,
Oh,
Ellie.
absolutely. We need to clarify the reason why Ellie's not here is that is real, is he not, Brooks?
Yes. It's just a bad time difference.
Yeah, just big issue there. So
yeah,
He did a great
even
job.
though I couldn't speak to him, I'm very grateful and thankful he voiced the main character, and I think he did a great job.
Yeah.
I can't do anything other than second that, because it was fun working with his audio. It was a ton of fun, and yeah, I just really enjoyed the story. And again, touch back on something Jason said earlier, I loved the kind of Groundhog's Day thing we had going on there. I remember when I got to the end of this, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, this dude's stuck in a loop.
Yeah.
This is like a record that just skipping over and over. How many times has this guy done this? It was really fun. It was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed adding that. Actually, it was an interesting point to figure out where to cut it exactly. At the end there, I was like, how much do I go? Like, I'm like, no. I mean, the reader/listener will get it. It doesn't need to be extra. So I tried to cut it as early as possible.
Yeah, you timed it very well. After the reveal and then leading into like, oh my gosh, yeah, it was like a 1-2 punch. The reveal comes and then it slid back into the realization that, oh, he's going to do it all over again. Oh no. Yeah, that was really well done. Good timing. Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to bring this to a close here. I feel like I want to ask you what future things you're working on. You kind of touched on that, Jason, but are you looking forward to maybe writing more horror stories for podcasts, for like other podcasts, maybe like the No Sleep podcast or the Wicked Library?
Totally. Yes.
Okay.
I would. Horror is very, very dear to my heart, so I'm not gonna step away from it anytime soon.
Okay.
And I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm a giant fan of the community.
Okay.
So being able to contribute more would be great. And I will definitely be submitting the stories I'm working on to a bunch of different places that would make sense for them.
Yeah.
And hopefully you'll see me again.
That's awesome. Good for you, man. Yeah, definitely. You've got the chops. It shows. I'm excited to see it.
If I may say, Mr. Pouris has submitted a story for season 3, so hopefully, we get to talk to you again.
Right.
I don't know. We got a lot
a good one.
of Jasons submitting for season 3.
Oh.
If we have room for we can only have so many Jasons. Is my point.
Well, we can always I can always switch to my Greek name, and
what is your
my
Greek
original
name?
Well, Jason is a translation of the Greek name Iasonas.
Ooh,
that's such a great name. Say it again, just for the record, so everybody can hear it.
Iasonas.
That's right. And you hear what's in there? It sounded almost like awesome was part of that. I mean, that's what I heard. Awesome.
yes. There you go.
I know I screwed the whole tail end of that up. I just screwed it, but yeah, I heard awesome.
I hear it too.
Continue awesome. I love you.
I love you too. I don't know where I was now. I'm
sorry, that was my fault.
Let's go with that. Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
We can always use my Greek name.
Okay. Awesome.
All right, that's good. We might need to.
Sorry, Graham.
Just to give the other Jason some space.
And
no, it's awesome. That's my name.
Awesome. That would be so awesome.
I love you guys.
Hey, Graham. I love to joke like this, but what podcast are you not going to be featuring on anytime soon?
I'm not on the Amelia podcast.
Okay, not yet. At least
that's a shame.
Yeah.
But it must be upcoming. That's why he mentioned it.
Yes.
Well, you never know.
Season 3.
God.
Right now,
you know what? Graham is such a friggin' star, dude. I love the hell out of you, bro. I'm telling you, man. God.
Thank you. It's nice of you to say. I'm just a guy sitting in his booth, talking.
A little talking here and there. Little acting.
Yeah, avoiding the pandemic. I mean, I have a complete. My life is totally suited to this Corona.
Yeah.
COVID-19.
Your studio is in your house. You have nowhere that you need to go.
Well, it's in the garage. The garage is detached. I do have to go back out to the garage, but then I climb in this little booth and I can continue working, which is a crazy blessing. This is really the time when hermits will inherit.
Yes. You know what's funny about that, Graham? You say that. I don't know if anybody goes on TikTok or not, but I did see a TikTok video where it showed a guy, an African-American gentleman, playing a video game, and it said, "The coronavirus to introverts." and it showed like. It played the Purge, and it said everybody must be quarantined. And he stood up and he just looked at the screen in awe, and it was almost like a thought bubble exclaimed, "Now the world knows how I am. And this world is wonderful."
Yeah.
Well, I get the sentiment. I get it. I'm like that as well.
I mean, we can all be. I'm. Most of my work as an actor is typically and traditionally, my wife, most of my career has been on stage, and that requires so many things to go right, especially large groups of people to come to the place where you're performing.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was in rehearsals. She was doing a pretty large scale production, but it's a unique one in that it only rehearses for 2 weeks and then performs for a week. She was in her second week of rehearsal. It was to go up next week, and of course, that show, along with everything else in New York, is done.
That sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So, it's totally, I mean, we're all sort of like, oh, well, that sucks. And what's next? And, oh, look, we're all together in our beautiful home with our beautiful family, and everything is that always puts things in perspective. But I, for whatever reason, over the past, 8-10 months, my life has sort of shifted to this booth, and it doesn't mean that that's all I do, but it's totally convenient for what's happening right now. But I digress. You were saying how much you love me. No.
Yes.
We do love
Infinitely.
you. That is true.
Absolutely, it is since day one, Graham. Day one. I have starred and I have put into my archive that first email. So yes, sir.
Only looks at it every other day. And on that note, gentlemen, I think we're gonna close out here. Jason Pouris.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry.
No, just to keep in mind that I realize now when if I'm not mistaken, just for folks who have gotten to this point in the recording, this Behind the Door will be released to patrons. The date is released to patrons. For those patrons who are like, oh, yes, I remember this story, I could scroll back in my patron feed to find it. Or I believe The Rivers is being released publicly the same day as this Behind the Doors is being released privately.
Yes.
Our patrons could, if they want to, just switch over to the public feed. However that's done, your podcatcher thing. But just thought they might like to know that, because I thought this was a nice bit of serendipity when I looked at the schedule that the Behind the Door will release privately the same day that the story goes public. So file that away.
And then when this...
That's actually a good thing to say, too, because keep in mind as well that because it's going public, we don't just release stories to the public. Obviously, a story has to have a beginning and an ending. So if you are a patron and you would like to revisit Jason Pouris' The Rivers again, go listen to this on the public feed and listen to the story before it.
Oh, that's right. We've given it a little bit of a little something extra. That's right.
That's right. So this is not only for the public, but it's also kind of a revisit for our patrons, but it's kind of a revitalization too, because we added a little nugget of something else right there. Go check it out.
Yes. We're in an interesting period, a few weeks of some really exciting stuff going on.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
Interesting.
Jason Pouris, thank you.
Yes.
Again for writing this story, and I'm excited when this actually does when The Rivers airs publicly. So we're throwing a lot of information in your face right now, but
I'm very excited.
Yeah. As people hear this publicly, they already have heard it. Anyways, you did a great job. I really like bringing the mythology into it, and kind of teaching it. It gave me the drive to want to go learn some more about Hades. So there you go. Points to you, man.
Nice.
Graham, thank you for being an excellent ferryman and asking for the fare, and also you did an excellent job jumping off that cliff as Theo. So,
Hey, I had a part in that. I had a part in that too, dang it.
You did. It was a joint. We jumped together.
joint effort. And Jason
This
Wilson.
is the second time, Graham. This is the second time we've jumped together. The first time didn't end so well for you, and neither did the second time either.
That's our,
Gosh,
that's our
dang.
own revolution going back again. Graham jumped in the very first episode of the Grey Rooms.
The very first episode.
Very
Yep.
first. So
Yeah,
come full
one of
circle.
the someday we're gonna do a story where gravity doesn't win.
You fall up.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
happened
crap.
yet.
Where did he go? Jason Pouris, thank you. Graham Rowat, thank you. Jason Wilson, thank you. And thank me, Brooks Bigley. Awesome.
Thank you, Brooks.
Thank you.
Have a great night,
We love you too,
gentlemen.
Brooks.
Grazie.
Grazie.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Join us each week after every episode for another edition of Behind the Door.